Minister, I too want to welcome you into the House tonight. I also want to thank the Sinn Féin senators for bringing forward this very important motion. It was an issue I brought up under Order of Business last week when the report commission was published, and I asked for a debate on that. So we're actually, the Labour Party, very glad to speak to it tonight. Just a few comments, I suppose, to start off, Minister. There can be no doubt, as has been said already by people, I suppose, on this side of the House, that the Housing Commission's report is a damning indictment of the government's failure to address the housing crisis. It highlights what I and Labour candidates throughout the state have been hearing on the doorsteps around the country in recent weeks and indeed recent months. Rents are rising, homelessness is at a record high, increasing every month, and house prices are soaring. Government has failed to manage and tackle this crisis. The Commission's estimate of a housing deficit ranging from 212,500 to 265,000 homes, based on the 2022 census figures, sets out the scale of the problem that this country is currently facing. The report confirms that the supply of housing is far too slow. The biggest failure of government has got to be that they have continued to rely exclusively almost on the private market while implementing other policies that merely tinker around the edges of the housing crisis that we are facing. Recent years of economic prosperity have been wasted by failing to tackle what is undoubtedly the civil rights issue of our time. Labour is calling for immediate and indeed radical change. We would take decisive action to end the over-reliance on private investors in the housing market and adopt a state-led approach to building more affordable homes, dealing with the rent crisis and indeed tackling the homelessness crisis that this country has at the moment. Labour proposes to allocate an additional £1.45 billion in capital to the delivery of housing. We will protect renters and end speculative land hoarding. We are committed to doubling state delivery of cost rental and affordable housing, increasing income limits for social housing eligibility to £40,000 per person, and moving towards doubling state investment in direct social build. Minister, there is a number of specific issues I wanted to raise with you tonight as part of this debate. It's been mentioned here about, on both sides of the House, I think at this stage, the Croí grant. I am on record at this House welcoming this grant and the thinking behind it. I have raised, and we had our own commensurate matter on dereliction and vacancy. We had a good debate on that here a number of months ago, should I say. But I continue to get issues about the drawdown of that particular grant, Minister, and that's why I want to highlight that with you tonight. There seems to be an over-reliance on solicitors as part of the grant, which is causing a lot of difficulty for people that I am dealing with. But in many cases, the problem that I'm coming across more and more again is the applicant does not simply have the money in order to pay the builder in advance. Now, it's been mentioned about the €50,000 and €70,000, which is great because we need to tackle that dereliction and we need to tackle that vacancy. But none of the people that I'm dealing with can afford that €50,000 or €70,000 to pay the builder in advance. Minister, the question I have for you tonight is, given that the last figure I saw, which was I think for 2023, that only 100 of those particular grants were actually drawn down, have the government got any plans to change and maybe to put in stage payments for that particular grant? I know it's been mentioned by colleagues on both sides of the House in relation to Croí had previously, and I would ask that that is considered because there is an awful lot of dereliction, etc. around. And Minister, you won't be surprised by the second issue that I want to raise tonight, and that's the housing adoption, housing aid grants, which again is another good grant, and I've always welcomed the investment by government in that. But you'll be very familiar with the commensurate matters that I've raised on a continuous basis in here, that the report is still, as far as I know, with Deeper or the Department of Housing, yet I have people who are unfortunately have to go to nursing homes, have to go to relatives because they can't live in their own homes, because they can't get more than the 30,000 limit that's on a housing adoption grant at the moment. It's simply not good enough that we're now talking about this. I know that I've spoken to you in a commensurate matter 3 times, twice with yourself and one with a previous Minister of State on housing, and we still don't have an answer in relation to that. That is something that would make a difference for so many people. I know you said that in our last debate, Minister, something comes to your office on a regular basis, and I would appreciate, again, using this opportunity tonight, if you could give a comment on that. In conclusion, Minister, I suppose, like other members of this House, not a day goes by that I'm not contacted by a family, or indeed multiple families, with a notice to quit or who continue to live in their family home, has been said, with the whole overcrowding that exists in the market at the moment. Not a week goes by that I'm also not contacted by a number of couples seeking affordable housing, as their wages are not enough to cover the rising house prices. We urge the Government to listen to the Housing Commission. It has been stated here tonight that they are doing that. We need decisive, radical action. We need a reset of housing policy. The time for half measures is indeed over. Ireland needs a comprehensive housing strategy that truly addresses the housing disaster and crisis that we have at the moment. Housing is the #1 issue for so many of our citizens, and it needs government policy to reflect that. Government Good, Cathaoirleach and Government Good, Minister.